Hello, gang. Welcome in. It is Monday, October 2nd? Oh, my goodness gracious. Before you know it, it'll be Christmas time. 2023, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 12:06 to be specific. My name is Matt Murphy, and we've got 3 hours or thereabouts together today. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show, episode number 426 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative. Let's get the pleasantries out of the way, and we'll get the show lumbering under its own weight. 615-737-9986. That is the telephone line and the super text line. If at any point during these proceedings you want to speak truth to power and offer your own opinion, a thought or two, you may do so using either of those avenues, either the phone lines or the super text line. We've got a couple of guests to tell you about. Two congressmen, quick hitters on our two congressmen today in the 12 o'clock hour, in the lunchtime hour, because both of them had, I guess for them, the 1 o'clock hour open and available. At around 12:15, 12:20, we will speak with Representative Tim Burchett, who will speak to us about his no vote over the weekend and what he expects to come out of this 45-day respite before we'll get right back into the possibility of a shutdown again, which, by the way, will happen. And then right after the bottom of the hour news with Jay Harper, good to see Jay back in the newsroom, we'll have Congressman Scott DesJarlais with us. Two no votes in the aftermath of the stopgap funding measure that was passed over the weekend with the help of a bunch of Democrats and signed by the President of the United States, which is where we're going to start today. So the latest from Washington, D.C. is simple. Kevin McCarthy was not able to wrangle the several votes from Republicans that he needed to pass a continuing resolution to keep the government open while appropriations bill negotiations were ongoing. And so he had to. It wasn't really a prediction from last week, but I remember Congressman Gary Palmer, who is in leadership, who's in the leadership meetings with McCarthy and Scalise and others. He said, thus far, Kevin has not negotiated with Democrats, and I don't think he's going to negotiate with Democrats. Well, he eventually had to negotiate with Democrats because he could not wrangle the rest of the Republicans over to their side to keep the government open during a time when they're trying to get these appropriations bill passed. My perspective on it has not changed. What's different in stopping the government or the continuing resolution outside of the possibility of people not getting paid and some minor inconveniences with regard to government shutdowns? Nothing, by the way, nothing. Except to provide pressure on those that want to spend our money and the money of our children and our grandchildren with impunity without recognition of the fact that we owe $33 trillion and no possibility to pay it back. So I was all in favor of shutting it down. You know what? It might cause you to work with a little more urgency if the government is shut down at a time where you have to appropriate money for a variety of different agencies and a variety of different departments. That said, the Speaker could not wrangle his own party and his own caucus in the House of Representatives, and so he had to run over to the Democrats and get the Democrats to vote in favor of this thing. So the stopgap measure passed the House. It eventually got past the Senate. There was virtually no debate in the United States Senate, which is unfortunate. And then the president signs it over the weekend, preventing the government shutdown, which none of you, absent you working in the federal government, would have noticed. And every time I say that, somebody pops up on the super text line or someone pops up on the phone lines. Well, I would have noticed because of this, that, or the other thing. I understand that there are a few of you that would have recognized a government shutdown more than most. But I still contend to you that 75% of the United States of America would not have known that the government was shut down when the government got shut down. 75%. And those that did notice work for largely the government or are in our United States military, and those people are always made whole. Always. So the fact that the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, made the decision to work with Democrats to prevent a government shutdown has led to Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida and others to suggest that we need a new Speaker. To which I say, okay, bring it on. Let's go. Let's go. You see, I'm a chaos man, first and foremost. I think we need a little chaos in government. One of the reasons that Donald Trump was so appealing to the American people is because he provided something that was different, and dare I say something that was chaotic. That does not mean that a chaos theory that doesn't mean that chaos theory and Trump theory are completely the same, but they're similar in terms of upsetting the apple cart and doing something a little bit differently and expecting a different result. All I know is this. What we've always done in American politics, and when anyone tells you, well, that's not the way that we do it, you've got to concede, you've got to make this concession or that concession, I have no idea whether Matt Gaetz is right or not. I think history will demonstrate whether he's right or not. I have no idea whether the 91 individuals that voted against this stopgap measure in the House were right or not. I have no idea if the 6 members of the House of Representatives in the Tennessee delegation or the 2 senators that voted against this measure, I have no idea whether they're right or not. History will do it. But I have a lean. I have a hard lean. And it is based on this. Going along to get along. Going along to get along. And doing it the way we've always done it has led us to a place where we are $33 trillion in debt. Where we value Ukrainian borders over American borders. And I know that the Ukrainian funding did not get into the stopgap measure, and I'm glad for it. But border security funding didn't either. Because it was a clean bill. Clean bill. We value the borders of Ukraine more than we value the borders of the United States of America. That is not hyperbolic. That is a statement of fact based on observational, based on empirical data observed from Washington, D.C. The Democrats don't give a rip about the southern border. And many of the Republicans don't seem to either. Oh, but they care about the Ukrainian borders. Now, I'm not saying that there's not some value and some level of support for the Ukrainian people that desire to be free of Russian control. But not this way, man. Not like this. And certainly not to be valued over the United States of America. Come on, man. So Matt Gaetz has a lot of baggage. But as a disruptive force, as a force of chaos in the Congress of the United States of America, I see more power to him. And one of the reasons that Andy Ogles and I are now incommunicado is because I think Andy Ogles represents that force in Congress as well. And he's demonstrated it during his time in office, and I'm not going to allow a disruption in our relationship while he was running for office prevent me from recognizing that. And I appreciate it. We are coming to a time in the United States of America where the Republican Party either has to get together, conservatives and libertarians alike have to get together, or they're going to split into separate parties, which will necessarily mean 20 years of Democrat control until all of that shakes out. Tell me I'm wrong. And I see that coming, man. And we either have to be about the business of getting people together based on what they agree on and forgiving certain aspects of what they disagree on for the future of the United States of America. You better be willing to talk to these folks that you disagree with. And apparently there's little to no appreciation on the part of Kevin McCarthy and the Speaker's office and leadership in Washington, D.C. about certain Republicans that say, no, we have to do something differently. Otherwise, our financial ruin will see the end of the United States of America. And that's real. So I was all in favor of government shutdown. We did not see that. What happens now? Well, you got 45 days. By the way, I did not mention this, but Headless Bell is back behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. We appreciate him. Bell, I always ask you the hard questions, especially as we begin the show. 45 days from now, what significant annual event might be going on roughly 45 days from now?
Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving. Very good, Bell. Give yourself a gold star.
Okay.
You will see all of this coming to culmination the week before Thanksgiving, and they'll do all of this garbage again. Either the Republicans will give up and give the Democrats all the spending they want, or we will get to a point where we're a week before Thanksgiving with everybody talking about a government shutdown and everyone screaming that you can't shut down the government the week before Thanksgiving. Now, we pass another 45-day continuing resolution. What's up, roughly, think about the week before Thanksgiving. Give me 45 days. What's going on then? New Year's. And we can't have a government shutdown the week between Christmas and New Year's. They do this garbage every time. It's not like this is new. We don't have to guess what's going to happen. We know because it's all happened before, which is why the disruptive force of Matt Gaetz and what he was attempting to do, along with some of his cohorts, to include Congressman Ogles and others, Tim Burchett, along those lines as well. I appreciate them. What we are doing right now is not working for the American people. And so if that involves a new speaker, fine. Get yourself a new speaker. Who's that going to be? I don't know. Not my job. Not my job. McCarthy agreed with the rule, and in agreeing to the rule, in getting to the speakership, he knew that this was a possibility, so now he's got to face that possibility this week. It is 12:17. We're going to talk to Congressman Tim Burchett in just a moment. We'll talk to DesJarlais right after the bottom of the hour news. It is a very fast-paced lunch hour and a fast-paced show on this Monday edition of The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Former President Donald Trump in court this morning, and there's still an effort to boot the Speaker of the House. We'll have updates on both stories at the bottom of the hour. I'm Jay Harper for Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Harper. 1222 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Discussing the weekend activities from Washington, D.C. As we speak, I might ask you to jip this. Do you have availability in there? Donald Trump is speaking right now outside of the courtroom. He was in court earlier today in New York. Let's listen in. Oh, no, it's from earlier. Never mind. I thought that was live. They were just playing a clip from earlier. So my bad on that. Donald Trump making an appearance in a civil trial in court because the suggestion has been made that Donald Trump overstated the value of his businesses, and that amounted to fraud. One would expect that Donald Trump, like most of these cases, will dispatch of this one. He's in court. It's a $250 million civil fraud trial beginning in New York City. It is a part of the overall Get Trump. Did you hear what Trump said? By the way, Bell K, I failed in my duties. I'll blame being out and about for a couple of days last week on why I did this. But we are enjoying episode number 426 of the Matt Murphy Radio Show. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, etc. What is the title of our episode on the television side of things today?
Well, today's title is actually inspired by Chris Hand. He didn't write it, but he inspired it. And the title is The Mark Murray Show, back in the studios and spouting liberal talking points, noon to 3 p.m. That's only half true. It's the libertarian lunch.
Mark Murray. I've been called better. I've been called worse. Just don't call me late for dinner, right? Thank you very much. Your telephone calls and your super text and etc. 615-737-9986. So I'm delaying right now because I thought we would have a call from Congressman Tim Burchett, but he's obviously delayed in some form or fashion, or maybe there was a little bit of a miscommunication. Oftentimes that Eastern time zone gets us. Sadly, that is the case, but we'll figure it out. People can't figure out the hour delay. So if not Kevin McCarthy, then whom? That is the $100,000 question. So let me work through. By the way, a lot of you are asking this question, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it. So many of you want to know how our representatives voted in the state of Tennessee, and I've got the rundown. It took me a hot minute to get the vote totals, but I got them. In the House, on the question of the 45-day stopgap spending continuing resolution, the yeses were Cohen, over there in Memphis, as expected, Democrat. Kustoff. And I think Kustoff is just, he's in West Tennessee as well. I think he's just east of Memphis. There's Cohen's area, and then Kustoff's right east of that, like Germantown and whatnot. Kustoff was a yes, and Fleischman was a yes. So there are your three yeses out of the state of Tennessee. No votes, Tim Burchett, Scott DesJarlais, Mark Green, Andy Ogles, Rose, and Harshbarger, Diane Harshbarger. Those are your 6 no's in the House. It moved over to the Senate, and out of the 9 senators voting against the continuing stopgap resolution, Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty were both no votes. And we look forward to speaking to them specifically, perhaps sometime this week, about the reasoning behind their no votes. I think I know, but I don't want to put words in their mouths. This was considered to be a clean continuing resolution, which lacks any spending cuts in it. It does not have any border policy changes in it, and it lacks any funding for Ukraine. It does include, it keeps the government funded until November 17th. It keeps the Federal Aviation Administration funded through the end of the year, so they don't have to deal with that during travel season. And it does include a certain amount of money for emergency spending. Like we dump a bunch of money into FEMA on a regular basis and then dole that out when there are natural disasters or other emergency type situations around the United States of America. So and it includes that spending. So ultimately, we'll be doing all of this again. And trust me, how much you want to bet that they go home this weekend? I would bet you dollars to donuts they go home this weekend. If Republicans are serious about dealing with this, what about a little mild inconvenience? Tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree when I tell you that it is ridiculous that they don't have to stay in Washington, D.C. until they get this taken care of. You have now 45 days. Whatever I thought about the continuing resolution, whatever I thought about the stopgap spending measure, whatever I thought about the amount of money that we continue to overspend on the part of the federal government, I'll say this. And by the way, we were as critical as anyone, and part of the reason that I said shut it down is because you didn't take this seriously in August. In August, that was 2 months ago. Unless the House of Representatives stays in Washington, D.C., I'm not supporting any of this. If they were serious, Kevin McCarthy would stand before the American people right now, and he would tell the House of Representatives that they should expect to stand in order, open for business, until they resolve this every day, including Sundays. I don't care. Let's go. If you continue to do things the way that you've always done them, you're going to get the results that you've always gotten, which is why I'm supportive of Gaetz this week. Gaetz says he wants a vote on McCarthy, and he's allowed to get it because McCarthy agreed to those rules. And if five, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if 5 Republicans agree that they want a different speaker, at that point, in order to remain Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy has to get Democrats to vote for him, which is a very tenuous place to be. Well, but hell, he had to get Democrats to vote for him in terms of a stopgap measure as well, did he not? I would be in favor of a new speaker. I'm in favor of chaos at this stage because what we are doing is simply not working. So the House has overwhelmingly passed this stopgap measure, although 91 individuals voted against it, including one Democrat. The measure includes, as I mentioned, $16 billion for U.S. disaster relief aid. It passed 335 to 91. Nearly every Democrat joined the majority. Nearly every Democrat joined a mild majority. I guess about 110 Republicans voted in favor of this thing, something like that. Joined a majority of Republicans in voting to pass the bill after Democrat House Leader Hakeem Jeffries told members of his caucus to vote in favor of it, and they did. Everybody but one of them. The bill has headed to the Senate. It was voted on in the Senate and eventually passed and signed by the President of the United States. We'll continue to break this down and discuss it for you and where I think all of this goes coming up. Unless they stay this weekend, they're not serious, and I don't think they're serious at all. I mean, these people wouldn't know hard work if it hit them on the top of the head. Now, you out there, you're working hard. You're getting after it. And it's time somebody stood up and spoke for us. 1230, Super Talk 99.7, WTN.
Good afternoon. It is 12:30, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We'll get the weather forecast to you here in just a bit. Arriving at the Manhattan courtroom this morning, former President Donald Trump continues to criticize the civil fraud trial brought against him by New York Attorney General Letitia James, claiming he's being unfairly targeted by his criminal indictments because he chose to run for another term as president.
This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time.
Hard-right Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz speaking on the floor of the House today, threatening to call for a vote to remove the current Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, this week after he had the audacity to work with Democrats on a stopgap spending bill to avoid a government shutdown. In a gaggle with reporters afterwards, Gates is denying that any of this is personal.
I'm pointing to specific things that Kevin agreed to that he hasn't complied with. He's just trying to subjugate his real and significant breaches of our agreement as some sort of personal dispute. But that says more about him than it says about what we're trying to do to change Washington, D.C.
That is the latest news. We've got weather next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
If you need foundation or waterproofing work done, it's a difficult task to find the person to do it unless you just listen to me and know who I trust, and that is United Structural Systems. But don't just trust my word. How about 25,000 other individuals? How about their word? Because since 1994, those are the numbers. Over 25,000 residential customers have gotten peace of mind and satisfaction through United Structural Systems. Here's how it happens. USS comes to your home, and they are problem solvers. They're not looking to upsell you on anything. They're not looking to fix your foundation if it doesn't need it. They're not looking to fix your waterproofing if it doesn't need it. But if it does need it, they know what to do. They know how to get to the bottom of a situation and fix it right the first time so you don't have to ever worry about it again. That's a level of peace of mind that you don't get with some of these fly-by-night guys. Homeowners simply trust USS, and rightly so. They've been keeping homes stable and dry since 1994, so almost 30 years now. Go to USSTN.com. That's USSTN.com to find out how they can serve you, whether you're in Middle Tennessee, perhaps you're in Southern Kentucky or Northern Alabama. They can get to you and they can serve you. 615-488-7855, 488-7855 for USS. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Quick programming note, Congressman Tim Burchett, in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk with him about activities going on in Washington, D.C. There's an interim senator out of California now. Governor Gavin Newsom has appointed LaFonza Butler as an interim senator. She's a fundraiser. She is a pro-abortionist and supports pro-abortionist candidates, which is what you would expect of somebody like Gavin Newsom. All right, back to Washington, D.C. to discuss the ongoing, I don't know what you call it at this point. Maybe Scott DesJarlais has an idea. Congressman DesJarlais joins us to talk about activities over the weekend and where we go from here. Congressman, good afternoon. Hope you're well.
Thank you, Matt. Doing well.
Thank you for the no vote. I think we need more people like you saying no to the continuation of these continuing resolutions that just kind of pushes the ball down the road. And, you know, I'm of the philosophy that if we continue to do the same thing like we've done it before, we're going to get the same results. Tell me your overview of what went down this weekend and why you decided to vote no on the stopgap.
Well, I've been pretty consistent since I've been in Congress voting against stopgap resolutions. I did vote for the one on Friday because it cut spending 28% and it secured the border and did a bunch of very conservative things. Didn't stand a chance in the Senate, but it does show where we as Republicans stand, and that's cutting spending, securing the border. The one on Saturday was just your typical basically clean CR, which continued to fund the government at prior levels and didn't do anything to cut spending. So, that's always been an easy no vote for me. We have a job to do. That's put our appropriation bills out and show the American people what the Republicans stand for in terms of budget. And that's what I guess we're going to continue to do through the month of October and then negotiate with the Senate and the White House.
You now have 45 days to work these appropriations bills. Is that the expectation? Tell me what life looks like in the House of Representatives moving forward. Now, I would hope that there is a spirit of urgency right now that you have a 45-day window.
Yeah, there is. We passed some of the more difficult approach bills in terms of, or actually the more valuable approach bills. 70% of the funding's been accounted for. We have some challenging approach bills yet ahead. But the bottom line is, whether the Senate takes them up or not, we will have hundreds and hundreds of amendments. We'll have late nights of voting, and that's the way it's supposed to be. We normally do that in July. But, yes, I think there will be a sense of urgency. And then when we go to the Senate, we'll say, well, this is the way we think it should be. They'll say it should be something else, but we have a stronger negotiating hand.
Help me understand what happens, because the way I see this playing out, if there is a stronger line, a harder line on cuts, then you send it over to the Senate, and the Senate simply says no, and they continue to blame the Republicans. They'll figure out a way to use their friends in the mainstream media to blame the Republicans. So if they delay this how does this all play out in your head, Scott?
Well, when you're only a third of the process and you have a slim majority, it makes it very difficult. So we kind of knew going into this year that we need to stop Biden's aggressive social agenda, climate agenda, and be a backstop to that. So we can telegraph to the American people best we can that, we've got to secure our border, we've got to fix the economy, we've got to be energy independent, we've got to cut spending, and we do the best we can messaging until we can control the Senate and the White House. So we kind of knew what we're up against, but we're relegated somewhat to messaging, but I do think that most Americans get it. They're feeling it every time they go to the store. They feel it when they fill up the tanks and they see what's going on at the border, and it's all around us. So the mainstream media can continue to be mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, but real Americans see what's going on, and it's our job to show how Republicans would lead if we get the chance to control more of the process.
Scott, I know I'm about to I'm not going to yell at you, but I'm going to kind of argue with the wrong guy on this point, but I still have to push back because I hear this for the last 24 years I've been doing this job. Republicans, when they don't have all three bodies, Senate, House, and the presidency, they complain that they have to have all three. And when they do have all three, you don't cut spending. Ever.
And I don't think you're wrong for bringing that argument. It's been a frustration of mine. We had that a couple of times. We certainly had it with Trump. We did cut taxes, but, we did not cut spending. There was a pro-growth policy that was to bring manufacturing back, cut taxes, build the economy. If that had been given a chance, I think we would see a better outcome. But you're not wrong to suggest that We are dysfunctional as a party. We saw that last week. We, had the most conservative continuing resolution ever, and we met all the demands of many people in the conference, and yet it still went down with Republican votes on Friday. So there's dysfunction within the Republican Party. There's dysfunction within the Democratic Party. It's kind of a situation where the tail's wagging the dog, no matter who's in power. And as Washington legislators, we got to do better. We're not always going to get everything you want or everything I want, but we can move in the right direction, and that's been a failure in government for a while.
Congressman Scott DesJarlais is our guest for a couple of additional moments. With regard to the individuals that stymied the Friday vote, in particular, Matt Gaetz is now calling over the weekend for a call to vacate. He wants to remove McCarthy. He feels like there's no confidence in Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Where are you on all of that?
Well, I think, in January, Kevin went through 15 rounds. Several different speakers were put up for a vote. No one could get more than 20 votes. I don't think that's changed. It's a very difficult job right now for anybody. I don't know that the people wanting to vacate the chair have an alternative. I don't think as Republicans we need to basically put on another clown show like we saw in January. If there's a strategy, if there's somebody willing to step up and do the job that can get the votes, we can have that discussion. But right now, it seems like it would just, foster more dysfunction within our own conference.
McCarthy, the Speaker, says bring it on. I mean, do you think that Gaetz has four buddies that would stymie his continuation as Speaker of the House, or do you think cooler heads would prevail before it got to that?
Well, I think that he's probably got other people that would join in. Again, I don't think those people have a strategy or an end game, which is dangerous. I think that there's some Democrats that would vote present or maybe even vote for the Speaker. So I don't think it would be a successful attempt if it happens. And again, if you don't have an end game or a strategy, it's kind of like Ukraine. We need an end game and a strategy in Ukraine if we're going to continue funding them. And, there's probably going to be a big funding bill coming forward that I will vote against. I did vote for a $300 million funding thing last week, but that's what was allocated after Russia invaded Crimea 14 years ago, and it's been part of the NDAA. So I think with Ukraine, there's a real gray zone. People want to make it a black or white argument, but we've got superpower adversaries in China and Russia, and as long as we have communist countries that are invading sovereign nations, I think it's up to NATO allies and us to help in that war effort. But that doesn't mean we should give blank checks like Biden has been trying to do to support their government, their pensions, and whatnot. So, anyways, I know that wasn't a topic.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
There's a third rail there is what I'm paying. Being on armed services and being privy to classified briefings, I think that there is a strategy where we help with Ukraine, and I'd love to come on and talk about that more because it's becoming more and more controversial. But
finally,
anyways.
well, and I know you've got a boogie, but finally, what is the strategy? Have you heard anything from leadership with regard to whether or not you're going to stick around in Washington, D.C., over weekends? I mean, the expectation on the part of the American people, and particularly on the part of the people of the state of Tennessee, is that if you could not get it done in the allotted time, September 30th being the last day of the fiscal year, and now you've passed a stopgap spending measure, that you have a sense of urgency that will keep you in D.C., one would presume, this weekend. Is that the expectation?
I think that there's a schedule to get the remaining appropriation bills done, and if that requires weekends, then I'm all for it. If we can get those done on the schedule that they've laid out, that's fine, but it's got to be done. And so whether it takes 7 or 8 days a week to get it done, we'll do it. I think right now they have it laid out to where we do it over the next 6 weeks, and we'll get the remainder done. But, it's very fluid right now, so I don't make that decision, but I'm there to work if that's what we need to do.
I'd bet you the rest of my annual paycheck for the rest of the year that you don't have it done by November 17th. But that's just me. You know what? That's just me. I know that if it were up to you, Scott, it'd be done like tomorrow. So I'm not fussing at you, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we'll have the appropriations bills done. Whether or not they get voted through remains to be seen. Some people, you can't please everybody all the time.
Well,
I think we'll get the appropriation bills done, but I wouldn't bet you.
Scott, if they don't get voted through, then they're not done.
Right.
Right. All right. Love you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. There's Scott DesJarlais. We backed Scott DesJarlais up with Representative Tim Burchett. I told you it would be a Congressional Power Hour, and Representative Burchett joins us to reflect on, well, the conversation that we've been having with Scott. Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm well, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for your no vote over this stopgap spending measure. I think the people of your district and the people of the state of Tennessee appreciate that. Give us your overview on what went down this weekend.
Well, basically, we abdicated our duties. We're supposed to really do two things: pass a budget and 12 appropriations bills. We did, I think, 4 appropriations bills, and we never even cracked open a budget. We have totally sold out to the uniparty, in my opinion. We will continue to do so. We push this latest one up to, guess what, Thanksgiving holiday. And I bet you they'll come out with a sweet little omnibus package that only leadership and a few of the anointed ones will know what's in it. So that's kind of where we're at. And that's Washington pretty much 101.
Well, and I know you know this, and I know Scott, who was on right before you, knows this. I feel like most of our representation in the state of Tennessee is cognizant of where the American people are, certainly where the people of the state are. But if they wanted to demonstrate that they get it, then McCarthy or someone in leadership would step forward today and say the House of Representatives is staying in Washington, D.C. until we get the job done. We are set. Yeah, but they won't do that.
They won't do that. That's why we weren't there the whole month of August, because they had all their sweet little trips planned. And see, I was going to come on here and play nice. But, you know, they had all their little trips planned. They call them CODELs, Congressional Delegation, flying all over the world. And some of them are important, you know, and you get asked to go on if you're kind of in the loop, or if they think you're playing ball with them. And then you go and, you know, you have a fancy state dinners with the speaker and all of them, and then you sell your soul, basically. And that's why we're $33 trillion in debt, brother.
So what is your do you expect an omnibus? I mean, because I understand even if you corral the House, the Senate will just sit on this thing because they think they can sit on it for 30 days and blame the Republicans and get what they want out of it.
Because we don't have any guts. We said during the debt ceiling, let's put a stake in the sand. Let's tell the Senate what we think. But all of a sudden, we're not putting a stake in the sand for this. We're just going to continue down this path of kicking the can down the road, and we will be $34 trillion in debt. And I'll tell you this, you know, everybody was worried about the being the shutdown going to be harmful. Well, when this economy crashes and the dollar is worth nothing, you see people pushing a wheelbarrow full of cash to get a loaf of bread, as you did pre-World War II Europe. Then you'll look back and go, maybe we should have been a little smarter. Maybe we shouldn't agree to send $114 billion unchecked dollars to Ukraine. Maybe we should have secured our border against drug dealers and human traffickers. Maybe we should have had some fiscal restraint. I mean, I saw today where they're sending a few $1 million to Morocco for global warming, something, how it affects small children and women. And that's your tax dollars right there. And we barely got $700 for the poor people who lost everything in dadgum Maui, you know, and then you send the FEMA over there and they're staying in 4-star hotels, and, you know, it's just out of control. And we've got to have somebody in leadership that voices our concerns and says that enough is enough, because we're not doing that right now.
Are you in favor of a motion to vacate?
Well, here's my dilemma. Kevin McCarthy's my friend, and he's been nice to me, and I get all that. But my conscience says, you know, we need to keep our word, and we have not kept our word. Leadership said we were going to release the January 6th tapes. We were going to have a term limits bill on the floor. We were going to have some fiscal sanity, several other things. And They haven't done that. They have not done that. This is just a return to the same old. There was no intent to pass a budget. We had Jody Arrington out of Texas, be a good one to get on. He chairs the budget committee, and he, lo and behold, he has a budget. I used to be on the budget committee. I asked to be taken off because we didn't do it. We didn't do a budget. Now I come off and they do a budget. So anyway, and Congress hasn't done a budget in 30 years. And if you know anything about Tennessee, they have a budget and they follow it and they balance their budget. So what we do is pass a CR, a continuing resolution, and then we just continue what with the spending prior to that, the Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer policies.
Tim, hold on just a second if you can. Ask Tim if he can hold over, because this is such an important conversation, and I appreciate what he just said. I want to explore it a little bit further. If you don't keep your word, then we have to pull the lever, and we have to look to new leadership. Who might that be? I don't think Tim Burchett. Matt Gaetz oftentimes shoots off at the mouth without having an end game. I don't think Tim Burchett does that. So we'll hopefully be able to explore that in just a moment. It's 12:53 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Folks, I have lost, what is it now? 35 pounds. There you go, baby. I did the math. 35 pounds. I was started off at 253 pounds. I'm now at 218 pounds. And I thank PhD, Dr. Ashley Lucas, and the rest of the crew, particularly my consultant, my dietitian, my nutrition, Rachel. We talk on a weekly basis. She's so supportive. And really, it's a conversation that isn't just, hey, how much have you lost, or how much do you weigh? What was your week like? I mean, she digs down into it. If I feel like maybe I lost a pound, and this happened to me a couple of weeks ago where I only lost like a pound, and she was right there and she explained plateaus for me. She went through some of the traps that I had happen in my life during that week. I mean, she really digs deep and is there for you. She doesn't judge you. She's there to make sure that you keep on the road to success. It's such a successful program. I encourage you to explore myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com, and find out how they can assist you. Most men lose between 3 and 5 pounds a week. Most women lose between 2 and 3 pounds a week. This program works, and I'm a testimony to it. And I encourage you to ask about the My PhD guarantee, where if you don't get within 5 pounds of your goal within your time frame, they will coach you for free until you do. That's the PhD guarantee. Go to myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com.
Good afternoon. It is 1 p.m., and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've got a mostly sunny sky, 85 degrees. We'll get a complete forecast here in just a bit. Lawyers for President Donald Trump argued that New York Attorney General Letitia James harbors bias against the former president. In court on Monday, Trump attorney Alina Habba highlighted that James began investigating Trump soon after she gained office in 2019, and that she promised voters during her campaign that she would, quote, get Trump if elected, something Trump emphasized outside the courtroom just minutes ago.
When you have a radical left attorney general like Letitia James, who's a disgrace to our country, who got elected on the fact that she's going to take down President Trump. We're going to take him down. She knew nothing about me.
The former president also says that Mar-a-Lago, his Florida home, would sell for at least $1 billion, orders of magnitude above Judge Engoron's valuation of only $18 million for the property. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida, speaking on the floor of the House today, threatening to call for a vote to remove the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, this week after he worked with Democrats on a stopgap spending bill to avoid a government shutdown. Gaetz also accusing McCarthy of negotiating a secret deal on Ukraine with the White House in exchange for more border security.
Could we at least agree that no matter how you feel about Ukraine or the southern border, they each deserve the dignity of their own consideration and should not be rolled together where they might pass where each individually wouldn't?
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, announced it's planning a nationwide test of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System this coming Wednesday. The alert will be delivered to all cell phones, wireless devices, including radios and TVs, at 1:20 p.m. our time here in Nashville on Wednesday. The message will read, "This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed." FEMA says it's a standard test that occurs at least once every 3 years. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
It is 1:07 and a good afternoon. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Show in progress. Not the Mark Murray Show, Bell. You're confusing people. I know. That's what I said.
I did something?
Yeah, you did.
All right, whatever, Mark.
Super Talk TV up and running. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. You can join us over there. Oh, look, I'm getting a call from somebody. I wonder who this could be. They obviously don't know I'm on the radio right now. Thank goodness I had my telephone silenced. Thank goodness for Representative Tim Burchett as well. He stuck around. He hung on the line because we wanted to finish this conversation. It's simultaneously, I feel like it's a complex story that needs to be told, but it's not that complex. We continue to overspend. We continue to do the same thing, expecting a different result. And it's high time that we, at some point, draw a line in the sand and say no more. Congressman Burchett mentioned that, we kind of did that during the debt ceiling debate or earlier in the year. One would think that we would be willing to do it again. We were just getting into the concept of leadership, Congressman, and I thank you for spending some extra time with us because I wanted to explore that further. You mentioned that McCarthy is a friend. It's my understanding. I mean, you don't become Speaker of the House without making good bonds and friendships. At the same time, it is a performance-based position, and some in the House of Representatives have suggested that maybe we need to look to others for leadership in the Republican caucus. What say you about that?
Yeah, and that's where I'm torn. I'm going to have to make a decision. I mean, I'm no Riley Gaines or anything. It's just something that's going to propel me to the national spotlight either way. I'll probably be hated by a lot of the beautiful people and the uniparty people, and I suspect my contributions will suffer for it, and they might beat me on it. But you just sometimes got to take a stand, and that's kind of where I'm at. And I haven't really officially decided or announced where I'm going to go yet on this thing anyway. But that's the tough thing for me, and just my conscience versus trying to keep my friendship with the Speaker of the House, which politically is the best thing to do because you get invited on the trips, you get to go to the steak dinners, and you get all the beautiful stuff, and then or you don't. And that's kind of the game you play in D.C. And you know that if you don't know that going in, you're an idiot. And I just, I never played the game very well.
I'm curious. Let's deal with leadership as it exists right now. And, we could easily speculate on where this might be going. And I don't think any of us know where it would end. If there's a vote to vacate the chair, then, where does it go from there? Then you've got Democrats involved. But
the reality is it probably won't pass. And the reality further than that, it probably will never come to a vote because there'll be enough Democrats and Republicans that want to keep Kevin in power, and they'll vote to either send it to a committee to study or to vote on, or they will rule on it right there if to take a vote on it. You can make a motion to do that. And so I suspect that's what they'll do. And I suspect they've been working the phones pretty hard all day, calling people and letting them and saying, hey, we need you to, vote against any kind of motions like that Matt Gaetz or anybody else would bring forth. But there are several others apparently that have drafted these motions, but Matt's the only one that'll do it. And oddly enough, they're bringing an ethics charge against him. So it all just kind of fits together. I think that's poor timing.
Well, and it begs the question. I mean, if the Democrats get enough votes to keep Kevin McCarthy in power, if we were to suggest that they're, I imagine that Gaetz could get 4 or 5 or 6, and maybe you're among them at the end of the day. You said you haven't decided, but you could get enough individuals to force another vote. What does the Speaker have to give up to the Democrats? They're going to want something. They got to.
If you hear them talk about it, they got everything they needed in that last voting. I mean, you didn't, as long as you don't dissect those bills and vote for individual spending bills and do all those other things. So we did pass 70% of the appropriations as far as our 80% of the money. And we should have stayed all weekend and worked on it and fixed it, but we chose not to. So, and they'll push us right up against the Thanksgiving break, like they always do, and then we'll pass an omnibus or another continuing resolution, and we will not we will abdicate our duties once again and not do a budget. So it's just
I'm going to go ahead and say this, and I could get accused of being a little knee jerk in what I'm about to say, Tim. But if Kevin McCarthy doesn't keep y'all there this weekend, then he does need to go. But because if he doesn't understand what's going on, if he can't see it like some jackass in Nashville, Tennessee on the radio, if he doesn't understand what we, the people, already get about where this is going, and you just laid it out, they're going to delay it for 45 days. They're going to hold the Thanksgiving and Christmas break over the heads of the Republican, and they're going to get another omnibus. We're going to do the same thing we've always done. I'm not mad at you. It's frustrating.
You got people in our conference telling us, here's an idea. Let's just change the name of it. It doesn't have, and the American public won't know. I'm like, what? That is the dumbest. After it leaves your mouth, the American public knows. But that's the kind of mentality we're dealing with right now with some folks. And it just, I just sit here and shake my head.
Well, please, if you, whatever channels you have, and I think that I speak for the listening audience of Super Talk 99.7 WTN when I say this. I think I've got enough understanding of our audience that if McCarthy doesn't have the intestinal fortitude, the cojones to understand the need to keep Congress in session until this is resolved right now, then there is a lack of leadership, and we need to figure something else out.
Well, I tell you what. I sound like one of these pro wrestlers. I tell you what, Gordon Soley. I'll tell you what. And the rednecks just wrecked their pickup trucks. Being a redneck, I'm not racially profiling, but we won't. If we do, we'll call it something else. But we will never pass a budget under this current structure. And we're required to do two things. We're required to do two things: pass a budget and 12 dadgum appropriations bills. And here we've passed 4, and we've acted like we've just done, we've done the Lord's work. And and
like I said to Congressman DesJarlais, I understand that Republicans only control the House, and so I understand that you have to work with the other party. But I've been hearing for 24 years, Tim, that I've been doing this. I've heard, well, if we just get all 3, if we get the presidency in both houses. Well, but when you get them, they don't control spending. They had them in 2017, 2018. They didn't do anything with it.
The liberals, they'll spend it on woke programs. And what do? We'll spend it on multi-billion-dollar missile defense systems that we don't need, but people in both parties happen to own stock in the corporations that make them. That's what we're doing. And people need to wake up about what's going on. The uniparty is in power, and they need to realize that.
Well, all right, let's end on a happier note because I think I know the answer to this question, but I want you to publicly declare it. When was the last time you willingly pulled a fire alarm to open a door?
Never. I was in that building. I was in a double secret meeting with my about 5 conservative guys, and because all the exits were blocked off, and you had to go up on New Jersey. Because I remember saying, this is the only time I've been to New Jersey, and because I had to go out the exit on New Jersey, because I ain't never been anywhere, obviously. But and I just figured somebody just went out the door is all they did and opened one of the doors, and because we were in there when it went off, because that's a fire alarm. And I said, yeah, somebody went out the wrong door. And that's what they were doing. The Democrats were trying to delay. They kept bringing people into the well, so you can't call the vote when somebody's in the well. And then they would walk back out, and they just brought in a stream of people. And it's a great delay tactic. Actually, I complimented on it. Prior to I realized the guy had pulled the fire alarm, but that's a clown show. He'll get a letter of reprimand and probably win by a bigger number in the Bronx, because that's the mentality. We are so dysfunctional. That is what leadership's about, and people are already taking up for the guy.
Hey, real quick, one final question, because 2 on the super text line have asked this, and I'm curious what your answer would be, Congressman. What is the uniparty?
Wait. I'll give you the answer. I'm happily married. Go ahead.
Someone wants to know, what is the uniparty? How do you define that?
The party is not Democrats or Republicans. It's just kind of the people that stay in control. You know, when the big shots fly in at the airport, the president does, you always see that same person out there, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. And generally they control the checkbook, and then they control, unbeknownst to a lot of people, they control them. But they keep their little buddies in power, and they stay in power, and nothing changes. We, like I said, we spend the money on woke programs, or we spend it on missile defense systems instead of, and the poor people in Maui, the families get $700 that lost everything. And that's the way it works.
Congressman, thank you for your voice in Washington, D.C. Thank you for the extra time this afternoon. We'll talk again very soon.
Always. Thank you, brother.
There you go. There's Tim Burchett joining us. He has failed to pull a fire alarm all of his life, which is fascinating to me, how he could manage to go through as many doors as he has been through and has not been compelled to pull a fire alarm, as has his Democrat colleagues in the House of Representatives, specifically Representative Jamal Bowman.
It just blows me away that you can hear the disappointment in his own party in his voice.
They will, and this is where my frustration is born from. Even if they don't recognize the necessity to stay in August, even if leadership in the Republican Party thinks that they have some sort of agreement to deal with the 12 appropriations bills leading up to the end of the fiscal year on September 30th, they should be fully aware of the game plan. This dunderhead in Nashville is aware of the game plan. It's not that difficult. I was publicly educated in Georgia. I'm not that smart. Democrats are going to play out the string. They're going to use the willingness of the Republicans to allow them to do it to their advantage. They're going to get to the week before Thanksgiving. They're not going to flinch. They're not going to move because they know their voters don't care. And they're going to beg the Republicans to do something about it. And the Republicans won't. And the Republicans will come to us, the American people, yet again and tell us how we don't control the White House and we don't control the Senate. And if you would just give us all three, if you would just give us the House and the Senate and the White House, we'd get something done about it. And when you get that, because I've been there and done that, when you give them all three, they complain that you haven't given them 60 votes in the Senate. Well, we can't do anything, and the Democrats are going to filibuster. There's always a frickin' excuse, and I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of their excuses. In the meantime, they fly home on taxpayer dollars to be with their families and to go on their vacations and to get it, and their paychecks aren't threatened. They work for us. And sadly, the bosses are asleep at the wheel. Not you. Not you. You're the smartest listeners on planet Earth. But not enough people are paying attention to what they're doing. And yes, the Republicans are a part of the problem. If this is my personal line in the sand. I'm done with this dude. I should have been done with him years ago. But I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I try to accept the fact that there aren't enough conservatives in Washington, D.C. to elect a conservative speaker, which is what happened, right? There are so few conservatives in D.C., you've got to get this mealy-mouthed moderate to lead your party as speaker. And I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I tried to give him enough rope. Well, he hung himself. And here's the deal. If they go home this weekend, screw them. I don't know how I can put it any more plainly. If Kevin McCarthy sends his party home this weekend without working through the weekend and getting it done, recognizing that you have to give yourself enough time to blame the Democrats for not moving on the bills that you put in front of the Senate, you go home this weekend, you're not taking this seriously, and I ought to already know that you're not taking this seriously. But that's my line in the sand. I'm so sick of it. You have to understand, we have to get why don't the Democrats have this problem? Now, I understand they don't think for themselves and they're a bunch of lemmings. Okay, I answered my own question. I just don't understand, if you call yourself a Republican, why at some point you don't get sick of losing. Because the cocktail parties are always there, aren't they? Aren't they? Because the flights are always free, aren't they? Because the junkets overseas, where you get to take family vacations on taxpayer dimes, they're always there, aren't they? Because you're always able to overspend to buy yourself another term in office, aren't you? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Blow it up. I don't care. 22 after the hour on Super Talk. Hey, friends, the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief is located in Franklin, and they want to see you. You know, especially for those of you with knee pain, they've got some special treatments and techniques, and I've experienced this. The ultrasound therapy, the laser therapy that they can do on your soft tissue to minimize swelling, to accelerate healing, to reduce pain, to minimize inflammation in the body. It's all designed to help you, in addition to the chiropractic care that you've come to know and enjoy from the Dr. Gill Center, particularly the spinal decompression. I am a patient of the Dr. Gill Center. I see them on a regular basis. Dr. Wendy, Dr. D, Dr. Dominic, that is, Dr. V. The entire crew has over 100 years experience collectively in the field. And the Dr. Gill Center has been around for us in Middle Tennessee for well over 3 decades. Call the Dr. Gill Center and schedule an appointment today. 615-882-4838. 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin.
Former President Donald Trump outside a Manhattan courtroom earlier today, citing Florida real estate professionals who say his Mar-a-Lago estate is undervalued by the court. Trump had quite a bit to say about it all. We'll have some of his comments at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Not Donald Trump. He's normally so reserved, Jay. He's normally a guy that really measures his comments and his thoughts. No, I can't wait for that at 1:30 this afternoon. Jay Harper over in the newsroom in the absence of Mac Morey. Good to have Jay back there. 126 Super Talk 99.7 WTN as we continue episode 426. I have attempted to collect myself. I know that
Don't.
I lose my mind every
So
once
much
in a
more
while.
exciting when you don't.
I just, I mean,
Sometimes you got to let the emotion flow.
y'all tell me. 615-737-9986. I'm going to say this. The disgust with the status quo is bleeding over to the point that a lot of Americans have left formats like this one that I believe are so vital to the future of our process as a representative republic, that we have become talk radio when it really took off, and thank you to the Godfather Rush for kind of reinventing the format and helping it take off in the 1980s. We became that electronic square, the proverbial town square. And we were unfiltered by editors. Before that, before you had this format, you had filtered telephone conversations, if you had telephone conversations at all. Or your only way to speak truth to power was through the written word. And you could send letters to your congressman, or you could send letters to the editor in your local newspaper. Youngsters, a newspaper was basically the way that they printed out the internet for you back in the day. It's the best way I can describe it for those of you of a younger generation. They had letters to the editor on the opinion pages of the local newspaper, where yes, you could send in a letter of discontent. However, it was always vetted. It was always read prior to publication. And if the publishers of a particular news outlet did not like it, they'd toss it out. And along comes talk radio, where people can speak truth to power, where people have the ability to communicate with their elected officials in a more direct way. But I have noticed a gravitation away from formats like this of a political nature. And I've noticed that people are giving up. Am I wrong? And if we cannot use this platform, and I think Super Talk is somewhat of an outlier in this regard, but I'm talking more broadly around the United States of America. If we cannot rely on a platform such as this to rally individuals to a cause such as this, then sadly what I think happens, people silo themselves. They believe that they're the only ones that think the way that they think. But then I go to events. I was at an event over the weekend in Alabama. And I spoke to people that don't immerse themselves in these types of conversations on a regular basis. Conversations about the future of our country, the future of our government, the future that we are going to leave for our children or our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren. And almost all of them are frustrated. The people that I speak with that stay away from formats like this or conversations like this, they all feel it. They feel it at the grocery store. They feel it at the gas pump. They feel a rudderless ship just wandering through the ocean with no leadership. But they don't know what to do about it. One of the reasons, I'll tell you what, time out, Jay Harper's got news, your thoughts, your comments coming up. I'm curious if you feel what I'm feeling. If you feel that slowly but surely the American people are becoming depressed to the new normal, that there are no conservatives anymore. I mean, that's the way it feels, that there are only those that want to spend our future for the present. The politicians that exist in Washington, D.C., sadly want to spend our future for the benefit of the present. That's what they do when they overspend our money. I think our economic recession has led to a general public depression. 615-737-9986, Supertalk 99.7 WTN. Back in a moment, right after the news.
It is 1:32, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Partly sunny, 86 degrees now. A complete forecast is upcoming. Former President Donald Trump's attorney, Alina Habba, in court today during his fraud trial, stated that the Trump's organization's values of its own property were not fraudulent. The state of his financial condition was undervalued, she stated in court. She also continued by saying that prosecutors would have Judge Arthur Engeron believe that if you listed your house at one price but sold it for a lower one, then you committed fraud. Outside the courtroom earlier this afternoon, Trump railed against the judge, claiming the judge is politically motivated and it's all a witch hunt.
But this just came out. Error in New York civil fraud case against Trump is flagged by industry insiders who say valuation of Mar-a-Lago cited by judge is based on a misunderstanding of basic real estate practice. So they're saying the judge has misunderstood basic real estate practice. I say they're wrong about that. He didn't misunderstand it. This is a rigged court. He's put there to do a job on Trump.
Trump's defense team arguing that Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Florida home, would sell for, quote, at least $1 billion, well above what the judge has valued the property at. He values it at only $18 million. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy, and, you hear about that cool down coming. That means over the weekend, the likelihood, if you've not done so already, of you turning on your heater is high because, temperatures are in the 40s, right? And so you flip on that heating element and you let that smell just waft through your house, and you think to yourself, why didn't I do what Matt Murphy told me to do and call Jeff Eddy of Efficient Heating and Cooling and get one of his certified technicians out here to maintenance my heating unit to make sure that I don't smell that stinky smell? Well, you didn't. If you wait till this weekend, you're probably going to smell that smell. Let's go ahead and give Jeff Eddy a call. I would bet dollars to donuts that he has the ability to get a service tech to you before the weekend and maybe get that heating element maintenance to make sure that everything's running as it should and to make sure you don't have any future problems down the road. There's still plenty of time. Go ahead and make the call that so many others have made. Look, I trust Jeff Eddy in my home. I know that you can trust him in your home. He runs a tight ship. He runs a great business. He never charges you overtime rates. He charges you low maintenance fees. It's all right there in front of you at Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling. EfficientHVAC.net or call 615-784-4424. Call and schedule that appointment today. 615-784-4424. They are a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric. They're an elite pro partner with Rheem, and they want to be your go-to HVAC person. It's Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you holding court until 3. The Drive with Brian Wilson at that time. It's 1:38. Good to be with you. We'll get to your calls momentarily. A super texter, Steve, has written in and wants me to give something of an explanation to the phrase I use. There are certain phrases that you'll hear from time to time on the Matt Murphy radio show. I use some more often than others. My grandfather always said dollars to donuts. That's where I get it from. I'll bet you dollars to donuts. Now, he used it at a time when a dollar was of considerably more value than a donut. I guess in Joe Biden's economy, I need to stop using that phrase because donuts cost well in excess of $1 now. At least any donut worth eating. But the phrase, Steve, dollars to donuts, and he's written in on the super text line, 615-737-9986. I am told the etymology of it actually started with dollars to dumplings in the 1870s and 1880s. So to bet dollars against dumplings or dollars to dumplings, that is to bet something of value, $1, against something of a very little value, because I am very, very confident that I am right. And so I'm willing to put up something of a higher stake against your lower stake. That's how confident I am. And eventually, dollars to dumplings became dollars to donuts. And there you go. Speaking of food items, before we get to calls, I feel like I need to lighten the mood for a minute. Belle, you've had the opportunity to meet John Henry.
Yes.
Good dog.
Yes.
John Henry.
Actually, all 3 of your dogs are good.
Well, thank you. We do our best.
They're friendly animals.
Yeah, they're nice. They're nice animals. They had a new dog sitter over the weekend. They did quite well with the new dog sitter, which is good. So we were out of town for over the weekend, and in coming back from Alabama, we stopped at Buc-ee's. Have you ever been to a Buc-ee's?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I have not been to one.
It is quite something,
Yeah,
and it is amazing. There's a lot of fascinating things going on. The amount of people, the amount of gas pumps, the lack of an amount of time that it takes you to get in and out, which is impressive. When you go in there and you see the amount of cars, you think, well, this is going to take an hour. And it doesn't, because there are just so many people processing you through, whatever. And they have a lot of food items that are pretty darn good. And their brisket sandwiches are their specialty. They're from Texas. And so we stopped, got gas, and, fueled up on, energy drink or whatever, and bought a couple. I broke my PhD weight loss plan and agreed to buy one of these brisket sandwiches and have a little bite of the sandwich. So we had a half a sandwich left over. E did. And she was planning to eat it today. And I've been alerted to the fact that John Henry has never been a food stealer.
He stole the sandwich. Okay, that should tell you how good they are right there. If this dog is going to change form.
No, so he's never been one to, like, you typically, over the course of his life, he's 13 now. He's getting more and more interested in it, and I knew this day was coming. But back in the day, he was disciplined enough where if he was in a room, John Henry, by the way, is about 100, well, at his biggest, he was about 120 pounds. He's lost weight now because he's older, so he's like 110, maybe 105 pounds. But he's a tall animal, so he can well look over any coffee table and see what's going on the coffee table, right? But, back in the day, you could, have a sandwich on the coffee table, go to the kitchen for a drink or something. If you leave him briefly, he's not going to automatically jump on. And I don't know that he's ever done this before, but I get a call today. E has heated up her half brisket sandwich for lunch that we got at Buc-ee's yesterday. And she gets a knock on the door, which was obviously set up by John Henry.
Yeah.
And she said, she goes to the door. She didn't think anything about it. And the brisket sandwich is on the coffee table, and John Henry's lying in his bed near the coffee table. She goes to the door. It's someone in the neighborhood worried about some sort of electricity. So it's some neighborhood question. And she comes back, and there's no sandwich.
That's brilliant.
And she said she looks around, not understanding what went on, and she got a big clue as to what happened when she saw the other two dogs licking John Henry in the mouth.
You have literally just written a commercial for Buc-ee's brisket sandwich.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I don't know what happened to it.
I had never heard of their brisket sandwiches until I was watching a YouTube video about travel, and they mentioned Buc-ee's in it, and they make the brisket at Buc-ee's. It's not like these things are made in Texas and shipped in. They're made fresh.
Oh yeah, no, they make the brisket on site. They start. So if you're there when they start chopping brisket, they scream brisket on the board, brisket on the board, and they start chopping it up. Oh, they're very excited. And then you watch them. They have these huge like ice cream scoopers, and a huge vat of chopped brisket, and they scoop the brisket on there, and so good.
Yeah, but when you think of fast food or convenience store food, it's like, stuff in a foil wrap under a heat lamp, and this stuff is like literally cooked and made right there.
It's made fresh, and John Henry has good taste. So you go, John Henry.
And she had just microwaved it.
Yeah,
so it's nice and steamy and
nice and warm.
Smell he was probably just like, I got a taste of that,
and then have no idea. The last time it happened, one of our previous dogs, he did it to me, and I learned not to leave the room because when it happened with me and my older dog from years ago, Hody, Hodi, he had not been able to eat or swallow it, and so. But he had gotten it all in his mouth. It was like a half of a sandwich. And he had it all in his mouth and was sitting there, and there were no other dogs. He was the only dog in the house at that point. And I'm like, what happened to my sandwich? And I look over at Hody, and he's like,
When I was in my early, do you remember the restaurant Stakeout where you could call it?
Oh yeah, sure.
I had ordered Stakeout one time, and it gets there, and one of my cats just smells it and is just meow, meow, just going crazy over the fact that he can smell the steak. So I make my plate. I sit down on my couch. He jumps up on the couch, grabs the steak, which is almost as big as he is, and just takes off dragging my steak across the floor so he can try to get it somewhere where he can eat it. And I'm like, you little rat bastard. So I have to rinse my steak off and wash my steak. Do
you eat the steak?
Yeah, I ate the steak.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, right? All right. Just wanted to lighten the mood. John Henry is a brisket thief. But you know what? You could do we know what she made in
place of the brisket sandwich for lunch?
Well, she bought a backup brisket sandwich because she could not decide on. I was like one and done. I was like, I'm going to cheat today, and then I've got to get back to it tomorrow. But she bought and only ate half of the brisket sandwich, but she bought a backup for later in the week sandwich.
Wise woman.
She has her sliced brisket sandwich that she has as a backup that I am almost certain will not be going on the coffee table anytime soon. He's done as he's gotten older, he like walks up to us if we have we're watching something and we've got a little something. He just like walks up to you and puts his snoot right in your plate. Like, hey, whoa, dude. What are you doing? He's like, whatever. You know what? I'm 13 years old. I'm on borrowed time. I'm an old man. You do as I tell you. Joe is in Kansas with a thought on Tim Burchett. Hello, Joe. Glad you called. Thank you for allowing us that moment of frivolity. What's on your mind?
Oh man, you got me hungry, Matt.
Have you ever been to Buc-ee's?
They won't let big trucks in there. It's only for four-wheelers, so I can't go there.
Are you a truck driver? So I was
Absolutely.
asking.
I call you guys all the time.
All right, Joe, I was asking my wife this question when we left Buc-ee's, and I said, I want to know from the truck driving community what they think about Buc-ee's because they're not allowed to go. So they probably are kind of, give Buc-ee's the old middle finger salute because they don't get to experience the food and whatever. So I guess you're confirming that. You're like, well, I don't get to go, so to heck with them.
That's it. I've never been because they don't have truck parking. It's kind of like going to Walmart anymore. And it's the truck. Some of it's the truck driver's fault for throwing their stuff out in parking lots and acting the way they do. But it goes back to what we were saying, what you were talking about earlier with Mr. Burchett. But go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll
No, I'm done. Just if you ever get a shot, Joe, and I don't begrudge you if you don't do this because, you'd have to not be in a truck, but try the brisket, try the sliced brisket, or the club melt's pretty good. Anyway, that's all. That's all. What's up with what's your thoughts on the Burchett interview?
Well, with that is he said some things. I mean, he said lots of things. I agree with most of your guests on the show, especially when they come into alignment with what you and the rest of the hosts. I listen to you guys all day long, every day, pretty much, from early morning until late in the evening when Mark Levin comes on. I catch parts of the show all day long, every day. And my biggest thing is he said something, the American people aren't listening. It's not that we're not listening. It goes back to what you said. When we take a stand, and the example being January 6th, is they make something ugly out of it and everybody goes to jail. Well, who that has any insight or sense of responsibility or character wants to go and be filmed and have their name smeared all over the internet or end up in jail for taking a stand against these things, and they've got us all strapped. I'm making pretty much the same money in 2023 as I was in 1998 when I closed my bar in Texas and started driving a truck. I still make between $1,700 and $2,000 a week. I have to live in the truck now versus having a home. There is no going home. I work 7 days a week. And if I take a day off, I fall behind on what I need to save. I'm 57 years old. I fall behind on what I need to save. And who's going to organize? I mean, they have people like George Soros. And then when Donald Trump makes a stand, he's got 91 indictments, and he can afford to fight it. I can't afford to fight that. I mean, I went to court just with my little sister over my property in Tennessee 5 times in 7 years, and it about broke me. So I can't imagine having 91 indictments for having principle and believing in a system that the system can be fixed. I think it comes down to the last. I mean, Joe Biden said it. The American people aren't going to listen to it. And he whispered it on that interview. They're not going to listen to that. They're not going to listen to the stuff about his son or about him.
Trump understands this, and hence the 91 indictments. In order to fix the system, you have to fully break the back of the swamp. And he attempted to do that in the first term. He was stymied at every turn. They managed to pervert the election enough so as to prevent him from winning re-election. And none of this, I don't believe any of maybe the New York stuff, maybe there's one or two, but the vast majority of these charges against Donald Trump would have never been filed but for his run for re-election.
Correct.
And that tells me everything I need to know about the nature of the charges. They are political at their genesis.
Well, that's the nature of the beast, Matt. That's what I'm asking you. I mean, when the last statement you made, I agree with it more than anything. I want to get a Donald Trump mugshot and burn it down on there, and wear it everywhere I go. I mean, I talk to truck drivers. You're just exactly right, though. I talk to truck drivers at the fuel pump every day. Your vote still counts. Your vote still counts. Make sure that, I mean, look at how we're living right now versus how we were living 4 years ago, the money we were making, the value of our dollar. But burning it down isn't the answer. We're just going to have to wait for it to crater. I mean, how do you organize it? How do you organize somebody to tell the uniparty now? Because we've known that for the last 10, when Trump ran. That was the reason why he got elected the first time, was he said, wait a second, they're all in cahoots. Well, they are. I mean, it's just the brisket sandwich took a lot of the frustration away from. I mean, my dog did it to me the other day, took my chicken wings. But anyways, the long and short of it is, I mean, where do we start, Matt, and how do we fix that? I mean, what would you suggest as an individual like myself? I have an opportunity to talk to people every day, all day long, and I listen to you guys for advice on how to approach the next conversation I have. But how do we convince the people out here that we've got to break the system when they're already broke? I mean, they're struggling. Everybody's struggling. You can't afford to take a week off and go to a rally and burn down St. Louis or Los Angeles like they do like the Democrats do or the liberals do.
Well, this story, you said something in the midst of that eloquent monologue that strikes fear in me, Joe. And that is, this story does not feel like it's going to end well. And thank you for your call, because I do have to take a time out. I'm reminded of, remember the movie Shakespeare in Love? If you did not see it, it was 1997, 1998. I think it won Best Picture. And at the end of Shakespeare in Love, the Queen in the movie has a line, and because Shakespeare says, I don't know how this ends. And she said, it ends in the same fashion as most stories do, with tears and a journey. And I don't feel like this is going to end well. Does anybody else get the feeling that all of this ends in divorce? I don't know that this marriage is going to make it. It's 1:54 on Super Talk. I'll tell you what, Savory Spice has it going on. 2 locations to serve you. When you don't want to think politics, you want to think food. And we were talking about food a little earlier. You know what makes that Buc-ee sandwich better? A little of that alderwood smoked sea salt on top of it. My goodness gracious. I talk about it all the time. People just want me to stop. I love it. It's absolutely, I put it on everything. I put it on everything imaginable, from veggies to whatever I happen to be eating. And, the veggies are better thank you to Savory Spice. I lose weight thanks to Savory Spice because I eat food that's better for me, and I spice it up with some of their blends at one of those 2 locations to serve you. One's in L&L Market on Charlotte Pike in Nashville. The other is downtown Franklin, just off the square next to Gray's Pharmacy. Go by and see Holly or David. Odds are, whatever location you're in, one of those 2 will be there. They'd love to talk with you. They're local proprietors of Savory Spice. They do it the right way. They upped that spice game, and you up your food game by upping your spice game. You up your spice game at Savory Spice. Go by and see them and tell them Matt Murphy sent you.
It is 2 p.m., and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. A partly sunny sky, 87 degrees on Music Row, but we're looking to get a little cooler later in the week. A complete forecast is on the way. Former President Donald Trump attending the opening of the civil fraud trial brought against him by New York State Attorney General Letitia James, calling the proceedings disgraceful. Trump claiming the entire affair is politically motivated and interfering with the election process.
This is called election interference, and worse than that, really much worse than that. And you don't get much worse than election interference, especially we're talking presidential election.
The judge has already ruled Trump committed fraud in his business dealings and is to determine the damages he owes if upheld on appeal. The ruling could force him to give up several New York properties. As Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz continues his threats to attempt to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on the House floor today, the Speaker appearing to shrug off the attempt while speaking to reporters inside the Capitol, saying that's not where his focus lies.
I'm going to just focus on what the American people want. And if somebody wants to make a motion because I kept government open and kept paying the troops while we did our work, I'll take that fight any day of the week.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, known as FEMA, announced that it's planning a nationwide test of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, known as IPAWS. That'll happen on Wednesday. The alert will be delivered to all cell phones, wireless devices, radios, and TVs at 1:20 p.m. Central Time. That's our time here in Nashville. The message will read, "This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed." FEMA says it's a standard test that they do at least once every 3 years. That is the latest news. Weather is on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Well, gentlemen, you need to know those numbers, and I understand how we are. We oftentimes avoid learning our numbers, whether it's blood pressure, cholesterol, T levels. You need to know them. And at the Tennessee Men's Clinic, they are dedicated on making sure that you do understand them and understand what to do if you find them to be out of sorts. If you have lost energy, motivation, or drive, gentlemen, if you're in your middle-aged years and you find yourself to be tired and grumpy way too often, if you've noticed a weight gain and lost muscle mass, maybe you just don't feel like you used to, and yes, maybe this manifests itself in the bedroom. Whatever your issue, go to the Tennessee Men's Clinic. For less than $100, they can give you a comprehensive examination, work those numbers, and figure out a plan of success. And that's what it's all about, getting you back to that energy level that you once had in a natural way. Ask them about all of these things when you make the call to the Tennessee Men's Clinic that so many others have made. I encourage you to do so. I visit, and you should as well. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. There's nothing like getting the thumbs up and those guys letting you know that, hey, you're A-okay. Maybe you just need a little more sleep at night, or, you know, maybe there's something else going on. There's nothing in the world like that thumbs up or developing a plan of action. 615-208-9090, 208-9090 for Tennessee Men's Clinic. Hello, it is the Matt Murphy Radio Show. Hour number 3 starts right now, 2:06. Glad to have you with us. I remain hopeful. I remain hopeful for us. I remain hopeful for this state. I choose to remain hopeful for these United States of America, although it's getting a lot tougher, especially after what happened over the weekend. Latest from Washington, D.C., well, the Democrats are pretending everything's A-OK. The Republicans are doing the same. Kevin McCarthy is facing a vote of no confidence or a vote to vacate, originating from Florida Representative Matt Gaetz, but presenting itself all across the country as a potential option. We had Congressman Tim Burchett on. Where would you say, Bell, for those who missed the Tim Burchett interview, we had Tim Burchett and Scott DesJarlais on. Both were no votes over the weekend in this 45-day stopgap. I feel like Tim is really struggling with the idea of keeping McCarthy as Speaker.
It definitely came across that way. It's like, and I say it came across that way because you can tell he likes the guy, but he also feels like that shouldn't be influencing his decision.
Yeah, whether he likes you or not, whether you're a nice guy or not, you have to be naturally a nice guy, a pleasant person to get to that position of power. However, that should not be all that it takes to keep you there. That was my takeaway.
Yeah, I definitely got that impression too.
Well, we'll see. It remains to be seen. And we'll talk to the rest of the delegation coming up over the course of the week. Just for those of you just joining us, maybe you missed it, the vote to provide a 45-day stopgap passed the Senate. President signed it. No votes on that measure were as follows: Burchett, DesJarlais, Green, Ogles, Rose, and Harshbarger. Yes votes were Kustoff, Fleischman, and Cohen over there in Memphis. Also voting no in the Senate, both Blackburn and Hagerty. I believe, and I'll have to go back and look, but there were only 9 total no votes in the United States Senate altogether. I want to say that Tennessee was the only state where both of our senators voted no, which is to their credit, honestly. It's time we stopped doing the same old and expected a different result.
And if you missed either the interview with DesJarlais or with Tim Burchett, both those interviews will be up at 3:01.
There you have it. Good stuff. All right, we'll get back to your telephone calls coming up in just a moment, 615-737-9986. In the meantime, what to say about Jamal Bowman? Socialist New York.
What a clown that guy is.
He used to be a principal. The principal of a high school or the assistant principal of a high school. Bell, you are old enough to know better. You're a little older than me, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay, good.
I'm 50. So that gives you a sense of where that's where headless back. Harper's old enough to know better. Jay Harper's back in the.
I'm older than you by 12 years.
Jay, talk to me about. I'll give you a few minutes to tell us the story about the last time you pulled a fire alarm.
Oh gosh, well that would be never.
Never. How in the world did you manage to get to your age, wisdom, and experience without having pulled a fire alarm?
I know. I mean, at least maybe even accidentally. It hasn't happened, man.
Okay.
Or, Mark, excuse me.
Oh, yes, Mark Murray. Thank you very much. Bell, Headless Bell, walk us through the last time you, sir, pulled a fire alarm.
I believe it was 6th grade, and we were having the fire alarm drill at school. And the teacher asked me if I wanted to be the one to pull the switch because it was right by our door, and I was all over it, and I got to pull it for the drill.
I bet that was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was a blast. Mm-hmm. I mean, just as how old are you in 6th grade? What are you, like 12, something like that?
Yeah.
12 years old, and you get to create the action that causes all that blaring, and it was awesome.
Well, I'm hoping that the system was on test, right?
Yeah. It was a drill that we were having that we were about to have, and she let me pull the switch on it.
Well, Jamal Bowman doesn't understand what the big deal is, gentlemen, because he, got a bit confused over the weekend. The Democrats were trying to delay the vote that was occurring in the halls of Congress. And Jamal, I guess Fox News caught up with him earlier today, wanting to know if he has some regrets and whether or not he stands by his statement that he pulled the fire alarm by accident. Here's what he had to say.
Do you still stand by your statement that pulling the fire alarm was an accident? You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention. I was literally just in a rush to go vote, man. That's all it was.
Are you afraid of any repercussions, either from leadership or from legally from Capitol Police?
I mean, listen, I take responsibility for what I did, you know, but like I said, I was in a rush to go vote, and, you know, investigation will sort everything else out.
Have you talked to Jeffries about it?
Oh, yeah, of course. Since day one, yes.
How was that conversation?
Well, I got to keep that between me and the leader, so I'm not going to share that publicly. Yeah, but we've been in touch with each other.
So Jamal Bowman wants you to know that he just made a mistake. The doors were locked. They were there for emergency exit only. There was a sign on the door that explained how to open them. You press for several seconds, alarm will go off. Within 30 seconds, the door opens. He thought that meant that he walked over to the wall, away from where the door was, away from where the sign was, and pulled the fire alarm, which clearly said, in case of fire, pull alarm. But he wants you to believe that this all was just a horrible misunderstanding, a horrible accident. Speaking of horrible accidents, let's go to Karine Jean-Pierre at today's press conference. And I'm not going to belabor this because I'd much rather hear from you. But Jean-Pierre was asked about the southern border and the disastrous numbers that are coming out of the southern border. Here's what she had to say.
We're trying to do everything that we can to make sure that we deal with what's going on at the border.
That's a lie. They are, well, unless you consider that what they're trying to do to deal with what's happening at the southern border is to allow as many people as possible across the southern border illegally. She also says that any attempt to tie border funding into the budgetary discussions that are going on would constitute, well, a political stunt.
That Speaker McCarthy made repeatedly on Face the Nation yesterday was that he wants any additional funds for Ukraine tied to congressional action on border security. Is that something that the White House would consider supporting for a vote on Ukraine funding?
So look, I think the American people are fed up. They're fed up of the political games, the political stunts that House Republicans are doing on our national security and also our government.
On our national security, so these people obviously have no shame. They have no souls. They're willing to suggest that it is the Republicans' fault that we're not doing something about the southern border. These are garbage people. They're almost, had they no political power, I would say that they're non-people. But sadly, we have to consider them because they do have a certain level of power in front of them. I could bore you with more, but I don't want to do that. Monica's in Hendersonville. I believe she's called John Rose's office. Hey, Monica, how are you?
I'm good. You got me fired up. I just decided to call my representative of the 6th District and got his intern on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I'm listening. What did
okay, sorry.
What did the folks over at Congressman Rose's office have to say?
Well, I told them that if he would please give him the message for them to stay in town this weekend, work on the budget. We were really, really tired of hearing that 45 more days was going to do it. And if they didn't stay in town, maybe that McCarthy did need to be replaced because we needed better leadership. And I told him, you know, we the people who are paying the taxes, anytime you say the government's doing it, no, that's us. It's our money. And I'm tired of them not balancing the budget that's spending my money. And while I was on hold waiting to talk to you, I looked up McCarthy's phone number. I think I'll call him next.
Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Well, share that with us. Would you mind?
His Washington number is area code 202-25. 225. I can't read my own writing. Hold on, I've got it up. 2915. 1 second. Yes. It's 225. So 202-225-2915.
I would encourage anyone that is of the mindset of Monica and Matt Murphy, or Mark Murray for that matter, to call Kevin McCarthy's office and say, I will support you. Oh, you don't have to say it this way, but the spirit is be nice to them and say, I would like to send a message from the state of Tennessee to the Speaker's office that we expect you to stay at work until you get the budget done. And if you don't, we're going to tell our representatives to elect a new speaker. That's the message.
I like it.
I like it too. And thank you for the number, and thank you for the call, and thank you for caring enough to call John Rose. The first step is to call your representative. You want to know what to do about what's going on? I have an action plan. Number one, whether your representative is Ogles or Rose or whoever it might be, call your representatives. You can find their number easily available online. And you tell that representative, I want to send a message that we expect that you will not allow another omnibus bill to pass, that you will pass 12 separate appropriations bills, and you will stay at work until you get it done this weekend and every weekend until you get it done. And then call Kevin McCarthy's office and say, hello, my name is Matt Murphy. I live in District 5, represented by Congressman Andy Ogles. And I expect that the speaker will keep my representative in Washington until you finish the budget. And if you don't, if you recess, if you go home, I'm going to demand that my congressman elect a new speaker. I mean, it's time to send a message to these folks. Now, will it resonate? I don't know. If I do it and Monica does it, maybe if Bell or hell, Chuck or Bo or Ron or Guy, they're all on the line. If every single one of us did it and every one of our friends did it and we tell 10 people and they tell 10 people. It's the way we stopped amnesty in 2007 and 2008. I know that. That and Senator Jeff Sessions. Guy is next in Franklin. Hey, Guy, how are you?
I don't know why you've had to do this to me today. Put me on a daggone roller coaster of emotions worse than the Steel Vengeance up at Cedar Point. Dude, I've been from Buc-ee's to daggone almost crying from the national divorce statement. Then we go on break, and then you bring me back with the "you have hope" speech, and then Monica gets. I don't know what to do anymore. I know I'm going to Pensacola this weekend, and I can't wait to go get me some beef jerkies at Buc-ee's. And now I've forgot everything I wanted to daggone talk about, Matt.
You know, that wall of jerky will do that to a fella.
Dude, it is amazing. Listen, McCarthy needs – I don't care about that dude. Mayorkas needs to go. He should have followed through on his promises. But really, this country we need a purpose. You know, I'm a military veteran. I was in the Navy from 07 to 12, and I got out because of the direction that the nation was turning, and now our military is just emasculated. We've got mentally ill people in cabinet positions of the White House. We have mentally ill, deranged people taking pictures in dog masks in military uniforms and sharing them across the internet. I don't know, brother, what it's going to take to bring this nation back. And I do have hope because I have a 10, a 9, and a 3-year-old that are depending on me, and it is up to us. And thank you, Monica, for taking that time to call your representative. I hope that everyone else shares the same message that you did, Matt. We need to band together because if we don't, we are in the raiding of the coffer stage of the fall of the Republic, and we are going to sports events like they did at the Coliseum. Our time is spent needlessly and carelessly, and we need to garner our focus back on what is important in America. And Matt, I love you. I hope that we as Americans can band together and unite for a change like we did on September 12th of 2001. That's the America that I want back. And I'll hang up now, Matt. Thank you, brother.
God bless you, man. Thank you, Guy, for the telephone call. You know, Guy made reference to something that was made famous by Alexander Tytler. It is known as the Tytler cycle, where representative government goes through, or a democracy, as he called it, is always temporary in nature. I don't want to depress anyone, but it's true. And the United States of America has already lived beyond the natural cycle of things. But the following quotation has been attributed to Tytler. For the most part, it is believed that Alexander Tytler was the originator of the quote, that a democracy is always temporary in nature. It cannot exist as a permanent form of government. Democracy will continue to exist up until that time that voters discover they can vote themselves gifts from the public treasury. Does that sound familiar? From that moment on, the majority almost always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefit from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependence back into bondage. One more quick time. From bondage to faith. Faith to courage. Courage to liberty. Liberty to abundance. Abundance to selfishness. Selfishness to complacency. Complacency to apathy. Apathy to dependence. Dependence to bondage. When I began quoting Alexander Tytler on my radio show was in Montgomery, Alabama in 2000. I said then that we were somewhere between complacency and apathy. I believe that we have now moved one step toward bondage and that we are somewhere between apathy and dependence. Half of the country is dependent on the largesse of government. The other half waffles between actually caring about what the hell is going on and not paying a bit of attention. And that's going to lead to bondage. Or separation. Or divorce. Unless there's a great American awakening. It's 2:23 on Super Talk. I know this, we have to defend and we have to protect ourselves, and we better do so on an individual basis, but we also need to do so collectively. So at your place of business, at your school, at your church, are you doing the things necessary to make sure that you're as safe as can be? Well, might I suggest Defend Systems? Hey, Brink's coming tomorrow. He's got a charitable event that he's going to tell everyone about tomorrow afternoon. So I'm excited about Brink stopping by the studios. Brink Fiddler is owner of Defend Systems. Their clients include schools, corporations, healthcare facilities, law firms, manufacturing facilities, corporate headquarters, entertainment venues, and so much more. Defend Systems offers rapid response medical training, emergency and intruder action plans, security improvement consultation, site surveys and threat assessments, all customized for your facility, your specific space, if you will. Hope is not a plan, right? The odds of you being attacked, the odds of a gunfight going down, the odds of a shooting happening in your workspace are next to none, but they're not none. And that's where Brink fits in. Hope is not a plan. It is time to get trained. Let's do so today. 615-236-6484, 236-6484, or defendsystems.com. That's defendsystems.com.
U.S. Speaker Kevin McCarthy still on the hot seat. And former President Donald Trump calling his New York fraud trial nothing but a political hit job on the part of the New York State Attorney General. We'll have those stories at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Harper. 228 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I was listening to the promo there. The voice guy, is he trying to sound spooky? Or is it just me? It was almost like he was trying to get into the spirit of October with his it's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And was that just me? Just me? Who knows? Maybe it was maybe the spot was a little short and they had to stretch it. They do that sometimes too. So if you ever hear me talking like this, I'm not drunk. I just am stretching the spot. Chuck is in Nashville with a thought on Kevin McCarthy. Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Appreciate your show. I've listened to you since you began here in Nashville. And I think probably today, I believe you've delivered the best show ever to date. I appreciate it so much. And the template you laid out just a few minutes ago about where, we've come from to where we are now, probably one of the most sobering, 10 or 12 minutes that I believe anybody could hear, but only if they're listening. And I'm afraid if, like the lady called in earlier and said, if we would just all call our representatives, I've done that. And I know she's doing that along with a bunch of other people that probably already have and still do. I'm just afraid it falls on deaf ears with their coffers being full of money, perks, and their presumptuous ways of living, on our nickels. But back to McCarthy. When you said earlier about a vote of confidence on him, it took him 15 rounds to get the leadership role. And prior to that, he had already decorated his office. There is no vote of confidence on him. He's the jellyback. He's spineless. He has no interest except his own personal interest in what he can gain for that. And we all know the word that nobody wants to say about how we get our country back, but we're in dire straits. And I think if people would just wake up and listen, and if this word could get out even more so than it is right now, it's going to take as much as we can muster and then some to get people awake, to know it's in your backyard, it's on your front doorstep, it's at your dinner table. And I don't know where we go from here, but I'll again say I appreciate you and the soundboard that you have to try to get the people aware of what's going on.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that, and I appreciate those words. Hope is such a powerful emotion, but it's also a helpless one. Because you are indicating that you do not have the power to alter the condition that you find yourself in without exterior circumstances helping you. And we can do everything in our power to get the word out, but I'm still left understanding that we need hope. We need prayer and hope. Hope that enough of the American people wake up to the idea that independence is more important than ever in terms of keeping our rights and liberties as the country was founded on. And if we give up our independence and we allow ourselves to be dependent, that comes with a price too heavy to pay. It's our liberty. It's our freedom. And too many people are willing to give it up. More calls on the way. Bo, you've been holding a long time. Hang in there just a moment longer. Ron, you too. John, you too. It's 2:32 on Super Talk.
It is 2:32, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Mostly sunny, 87 degrees now in Music City. A full forecast is on the way. As Florida Republican Representative Matt Gaetz continues his threats to attempt to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on the House floor today, Speaker McCarthy tells reporters inside the Capitol he's not focused on all that. He says he's only focused on the work ahead following this weekend's bipartisan deal to keep the government open.
I never give up. I think that's destructive to the institution. I think it's destructive to the country, and my focus is surely only on getting our work done.
Attorneys for President Donald Trump argued in New York court today that the Attorney General there, Letitia James, harbors bias against the former president. Trump attorney Alina Habba highlighted that James, she began investigating Trump soon after she gained office back in 2019, and that she promised she would get Trump if elected, something Trump emphasized outside the courtroom earlier this afternoon.
When you have a radical left Attorney General like Letitia James, who's a disgrace to our country, who got elected on the fact that she's going to take down President Trump. We're going to take him down. She knew nothing about me.
The former president's defense team also saying that Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Florida home, would sell for at least $1 billion, well above what the judge has valued the property at of only $18 million. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hey, friends, when you hear me talking about Paul Winkler, know this, that Matt Murphy gets paid to talk nice about Paul Winkler, but I would never say something that I did not believe in, and I believe in this. Paul Winkler is the best when it comes to financial planning. Paul Winkler is the best when it comes to helping you understand your investment. He is the best when it comes to understanding the rules of the road, and he operates on the highest level of fiduciary status that there is. And because of that, he asks me to remind people that our relationship is a paid relationship, but it also goes beyond that because I'm also a client of Paul's. When I first heard his message, I needed it. I needed it in my life. The investment education is evidence-based. It's backed by Nobel Prize-winning research. You know me, and you know that I wouldn't steer you wrong in this regard. Call Paul Winkler today and schedule that free 15-minute consultation, 615-851-1950, 615-851-1950. Set up that free 15-minute telephone call right now. You can also do so on the website. That site, paulwinkler.com. 10 separate offices to serve. You can go to any one of them in Middle Tennessee. It's paulwinkler.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Speaking of government shutdowns and fire alarms for the majority of the show today, it is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Don't want to get out of here without sharing this one with you. This is a pretty good one. Let's go into the Wayback Machine to 2021, and then we'll flash forward to 2023. Here's New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Am I saying that correctly? I don't care.
Our message to the world is send us your people, send us those who need the cloak of comfort that we can demonstrate as New Yorkers with big hearts and open arms, and we'll provide a safe haven. Want them to.
By the way, that's 2021, okay? I'm going to play that for you one more time before you get to 2023. You'll hear the audio change. 2021, the governor of the state of New York, bring us your tired, your poor.
Our message to the world is send us your people, send us those who need the cloak of comfort that we can demonstrate as New Yorkers with big hearts and open arms, and we'll provide a safe haven.
Want them to have a limit on who can come across the border. It is too open right now. If you're going to leave your country, go somewhere else. You're going to start seeing people living in tents, not just on the border, but in the streets of New York.
We're at capacity.
We're at capacity. That was the last clip. It got cut off there at the end. My apologies for that.
That's racist, right?
Of course it is.
Okay, I thought so.
According to 2021, Kathy Hochul, or Hochul. I don't care enough to learn it. That's on me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's we're wide open, and let's go. Let's let everybody in until they actually come, and then not so much. Bo is next in Lewisburg. Hey, Bo, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. You know, I studied a lot of the founders' papers and read a lot, and George Washington was not a big fan of the two-party system. And he warned us about it.
He did. Farewell address, matter of fact.
Correct. And as a Tennessean, you know, we can talk to our representatives and affect the policies that govern political parties in this state. So we can allow more political parties to get onto the voting rolls, you know, on the ballots, or we can do what I think is the best thing to do is get rid of the two-party system in the state of Tennessee. We've got the right people if the politicians that are down there right now are willing to step aside and do what's right for the state and what's right for the country. Because I think if it happened in Tennessee, you would see it happening in a lot of other states.
So how do you propose doing that?
It's a state law. You just have to have the politicians vote to remove it. So what we have to do is like what Phil Valentine did. You know, you go down around the state hall and you honk your horn.
Well, but party organization. So, I'm appreciating what you're saying. I would love to see a challenge to the two-party system with more political organizations, more political parties. Part of the way that the two-party system has its stranglehold is that Republicans, not conservatives, but Republicans convince people like me, and I'm a libertarian with a small L, right? I don't belong to the Libertarian Party, but I believe in the libertarian philosophy of government. So they convince people like me that I better vote Republican, otherwise the Democrats are going to win, and that's worse, right? So I think go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think we win more hearts and minds by adding to the system as opposed to subtracting from it, because I don't understand how that would work, because we could eliminate the R's and D's on the ballot, but the associations will remain, and the associations are protected under the First Amendment.
Yeah, but we could say that they can't be a R or a D on the freaking ballot. That's how you do it.
Well, I'm not trying to be argumentative when I ask this question. I genuinely mean, how does that help if there's no R's and D's on the ballot?
Well, first of all, a lot of people who go and vote, they go vote straight tickets, or they look at a little picture and they say a donkey, or they see an elephant, or they see a grasshopper, and that's who they're going to vote for, because that's how it was when people were illiterate. You had pictures of animals. And we need to get away from that. We need the people to get educated about who's running for office and take interest in who's running for office. And you can't do that with a two-party, a three-party, a four-party, or five-party system. You have to throw it all out and go back to individuals like it was designed in the U.S. Constitution.
Well, we've always had political parties. It's just
not for the first two. Not for the
no,
first
we did.
five.
No, sure we did. Sure we did. I mean, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were divided and had followers that were completely divided in their belief in how strong the federal government should be versus abdicating to the various states. And Jefferson and Adams were fierce political rivals at the beginnings of the formation of this country. And you're talking about, two of the primary architects of how this country was formulated. So I would disagree. Now, I understand the argument made by Washington, who was above it all, that if we serve, and we've, to your point, Bo, we have begun to serve political parties as opposed to demanding of our elected representatives that they serve the American people. And that's to your point, and you and I are very much in agreement on that. I've got to scoot. I appreciate the call, Bo, and I appreciate you waiting. Ron is in White House. Ron, how's it going, buddy?
It's going well, thank you. Let me say, I love your show.
Thank you.
And I apologize for my speech. I have tongue cancer. In 9 days, I'm going to take my tongue and voice back.
Well, I can hear you. I can hear you and understand you just fine, Ron. You're doing well.
Good. So while I have the ability to say something, I thought I would say something. I have pulled a fire around. In 1967, in the hospital, during the blizzard, they were evacuating the first 2 floors of the hospital before they realized what had happened. I was 7 years old. I snuck out of my room, and I paused up in the chair, and the box said TULL. So I did. So
you may have said that. Did you get caught?
Oh yes.
What happened? What happened, Ron?
Well, they tried to read my mother's riot act, but she wasn't even there. She told them, "Look, my son was in your chair. He snuck out under your watch, So there was really nothing that I said for my mother. But yeah, I have pulled a fire around, I must admit.
You haven't pulled another one since you were 7, have you?
No, so I learned my lesson.
Good for you. Well, that's a great story. Call back soon, Ron. I enjoyed it. I'm sorry that I have to, but I have to scoot along. I want to get to as many as I can before we talk to Brian Wilson about what's going on the drive this afternoon. Let's talk to John in the borough. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, man, how you doing, bud?
I'm well. Thank you.
Good. So I don't know the exact terminology of it, but about 10 or 12 years ago, Michael DelGiorno, Phil Valentine, several other people from the radio station, several state representatives all came to our church, okay? What they were doing is they were trying to get the majority of the states to go independent and separate from, I guess, the union is what you would call it, or separate from the United States of itself to where every state would be independent, have their own government, everything is self-funded through the states, and so forth and so on. Why is that not an option still?
I would have to know a little. Are you talking about they were promoting a convention of states?
I guess. It's where if you have I think it's 60% or 67% of all the states, if they vote on it and they all agree to it, then they become independent and they are not part of the United States.
Yeah, I mean,
they do not fall under the federal government.
Well, the Convention of States is a portion of the Constitution of the United States, or it falls under a portion of the United States Constitution. I tell you what I'll do. This is a great conversation. I can't have it today, John, because I'm out of time. But I promise you that we'll have it tomorrow. If you listen tomorrow, I'll talk about the Convention of States because it's an idea that's never really been utilized. It's been an underutilized concept over the years, but I think it's time that we called for dramatic measures. And it is a grassroots effort that has been long discussed. If this is what you're referring to, it's Article 5 of the United States Constitution, which allows for the proposal of amendments in a different way, and promotes the limitation of federal power and bringing power back to the individual states. I don't have the actual article in front of me, otherwise I'd quote it directly for you. But I think that's probably what we're talking about there, although I don't know. I wasn't around back then. It is 2:49. Check that, 11 minutes until the top of the hour. We'll speak with Brian Wilson in a moment, see what's going on the drive right after this on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Former President Donald Trump continuing to rail against the New York Attorney General and judge in his fraud trial. And the debate over funding Ukraine rages on. We'll have those stories and more at 3 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Jay Harper in for Mac Morey this afternoon. We look forward to hearing him all afternoon long on The Drive with Brian Wilson. By the way, just real quick, because several of you on the Super Text line have asked, it's 202-225-2915 is Kevin McCarthy's office number. I don't generally get into that, but it came up during the show today, and Monica indicated that she had that number. And Monica has told us that she called and spoke to Ann, the intern, and asked that Mr. McCarthy please be the leader that keeps John Rose, my representative in Washington, D.C., to do their business this weekend to balance the budget and stay till done. So let's see if that comes of anything. I seriously doubt it. I know the conversation will continue. I have faith that Brian Wilson will give us his take on all of this, and he joins us now to talk about just that. Hey, Brian.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about the guy who apparently had a drug deal, and the police saw it, and they had surveillance of it. And he tried to escape on one of those electric scooters. I thought that would be my lead story. No, clearly, it didn't end well.
No,
they caught up with him pretty quickly.
I bet it did not. No,
yeah. No, I think I'll stick with some of the things you've been talking about here. I noticed, you said that Jay's in, and we always love to have Jay in. Mac Morey obviously is too ashamed to show his face after the prediction he made about the Titans game this past weekend. He thought they were going to get creamed.
Well, I hope Mac Morey's not making a living making predictions because
some of his predictions have been dead on. This one not so much. So I know why he's not here today, because I was gonna light him up about it, but. We'll see. I figured
maybe he was in New York taking in the Chiefs jets with Tay-Tay, as they call her.
If he was there, my wife was there too. She was there. She didn't go to the game, but she was in New York this weekend. So,
more out of D.C. this afternoon, I expect.
I think you'll have a lot of stuff. In fact, I'm gonna try to tell you what the heck happened and admit that I was wrong about one thing. It happens once in every decade or so, and I'm gonna fess up.
Well, there you go. We'll listen to the Fess Up together on The Drive with Brian Wilson in mere moments, and I'm back tomorrow at high noon. Until then, have a wonderful afternoon, folks. So long.